Yeah, so thank you so much for Qualiware for inviting us to the stage. So I'm Milan Guenther. I'm actually a president of the intersection group. This is sitting in the corner, Christian, economy of the for the common good. And yeah, because I told you before, I'm a designer, so I want to first show something nice, like a nice car. It's a nice car, no, because you see it's very dynamic. Maybe you see yourself in that car. That's actually the purpose of this picture. And if any of you have been in the business of designing enterprises or designing businesses, or you're entrepreneurs or you're managers, you know that making something good is quite difficult at scale, right? So for this car you need a lot of material, and if you want to design this car, you want to really know about I don't know, plastic and glass and motors and shape and ergonomics and streamlining in the wind. And also, if you happen to be in this particular company, also reinvent some things that have been done very differently in the decades before when it comes to cars. But this is where I live. This is Paris. And this is what it often looks like in Paris. And the question is now, imagine you are in that car that I showed you before, but you are there on this street. Do you still want to be in that car? Probably not, because traffic is a big problem in Paris. And so I actually don't own a car. And I actually, walking here this morning, I was very glad to see how it works in Copenhagen. I think it's the first time I got ever stuck in a like a bicycle traffic jam. So this is what it looks like in Paris. Also, you know, it's not always sunny. It's not always super like on all the like. Of course, also Paris has a lot of advertising for the city and so on. And what you see here is what they are trying to do, like lots of bike lanes. What you also see here is the difference between what you could call design. So, you know, the design is actually this bicycle lane here. You're supposed to go to the left, then cross here and go there. Of course, you don't do that, right? So the actual experience is dodging this lane, right? And so experiences do not always follow what we design. But the more important question here is, if we want a sustainable mode of transportation, what do we actually have to look at? Do we have to look at just the vehicle? Like, is it really just the bicycle versus the car? Or do we have to actually look at this and redesign it? And so the same question goes for our enterprises. If we want to design enterprises that make sense for people, that can be perceived as well-designed, that really add value to people's lives and that we were proud to work for and that we like to invest in and we like to buy from and we think about as a brand and we go, wow, this is really a cool enterprise. What needs to happen? And maybe we have to look at the bigger picture. So what is that bigger picture, Christian?
Thank you, Milan, for the question. I'm still in the question how this conference can become the best conference in the history of the universe. And what might our contribution be to that goal? And I already said I'm a coachee of nature, and the most effective technology of acquiring wisdom in nature is listening. And I try to listen to the answer of nature. What is the final purpose of the economy? Did you ever ask this question to yourself, to your sitting neighbor, to your company colleagues, to your family, to your children? There are some suggestions. It is just one possible suggestion. Do you agree? Do you understand? What did he mean actually? Some interpreted it's making money first and foremost, increasing capital, maximizing profits. That's one option. But if we really do that, if we really maximize profits and look at money first, then a means of the economy is turning into the goal, just like this. It's possible. You can do that, at least some for some time, but all of us all the time. If we do that for a longer time as the whole global economy, then we're destroying the foundations of life. You might have heard of the planetary ecological boundaries, investigated and presented by Stockholm Resilience Center and an international community of scientists. These are the 9 critical ecological boundaries of the planet. In 2021, we had crossed 4 of them. Last year, we crossed another 2. Now we have crossed 6 out of 9 ecological planetary boundaries, and these are not the only crises that we are creating, that we are co-creating thanks to our current understanding of what the economy is about and how we are practicing the economy. Currently, 200 million people more are getting hungry to bed than before the pandemic. Did you know that? Is that on the dashboard of your company? Is that on the dashboard of your economic minister? Before the pandemic, for the first time in the history of this survey, which is not a universal survey, but it's an international survey of Edelman agency, and they were asking, do you think that capitalism is doing more good than harm or more harm than good? And for the first time in the history of this survey, there was a majority of the surveyed persons who answered, actually, I think it's now doing more harm than good. And then it's high time to ask the question, what is actually the purpose of the economy? Here we go again. Now nature has answered. Meanwhile, listening paid off. And the answer is, what about the common good? Because it's about all of us and all other species and future generations. And business and the economy are not the center of the universe. They are a means to help achieve this goal. So let's start with maybe a bit more precise. This is because in economics textbooks, I never ever found a definition of economy. We will find a definition of markets, you will find a definition of finance, you will find a definition of companies. But companies, do you know what a company means? It comes from Latin cum pane, to break bread together. That's not in textbooks either. And the definition of economy is not in textbooks either. This is just a proposition. We can talk about it, we should develop it further, but maybe if the economy is about the satisfaction of basic human needs within the ecological boundaries of the planet and aligned with fundamental democratic and constitutional goals such as dignity, solidarity, sustainability, or democracy, well then, we ought to measure economic success according to these goals and to this definition. Is GDP providing that? Is GDP providing that? Well, and since when do we know that GDP is not providing that? You see, we lost half of a century in developing a better methodology to measuring economic success. So it's very high time to go for it. Our modest proposal is to ask you and you and you and the citizens of Copenhagen and of Denmark and of the European Union and of the planet and future generations and other species, what is the most important ingredient, component, element of a good life for all of us, today and tomorrow. And maybe in participatory processes, people will answer, I don't have the time to ask you now, but that was now tempting. I've asked so many audiences, and I'm just feeding back the answers of more than 1,000 audiences. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe you have slightly different preferences, but more or less, this should be the dashboard of our economic policy, of our greater economy. And it could be, ideally, the result of a participatory democratic process. And once we have achieved that exercise, in a second step, we can pass on to the level of business.
Yeah, so we are aware that most of you are not economy designers, right? So, well, I would hope that someone in this room is designing the economy of Denmark as a whole, as a job, but maybe you don't, and that's fine. So the question is, if we are not, I don't know, the king or the queen or the emperor or whatever you call it, what can we do at our level to actually design or help design, bring about a better economy? And so when we look at an enterprise level, this comes back to the question, when is an enterprise well designed? And when is it badly designed? And it's not easy, because again, if you look into the textbooks, you see, they have to excel at marketing and at HR and maybe IT and operations, and they have to be competitive and product market fit and be lean and be agile and be, compliant and all of these things. But we found that there's one way to really look at, if you want to judge if anything is well designed, especially an enterprise as a dynamic system. Just look at the outcomes it produces, look at the outputs that it brings about. And here you have an example of an enterprise that brought about a pile of junk, allegedly in China. And so we don't know why that happened, right? It might be, maybe the product quality was bad, maybe all the bikes are broken, maybe they are not easy to recycle, maybe they were not easy to use. But maybe it's also they didn't actually look at the bigger picture. They didn't look at the experience and how these things that they were flooding all these cities with would be used, would be treated. So here you have a situation where some of these bikes are really making the life difficult for some citizen in a city. So we cannot, again, just look at the product or the production process or the enterprise. We have to look at the wider context where whatever we are doing is being used, is being consumed, is being, supposed to be useful. And we have to look at the systems that drive this, right? We have to look at the operations. We have to maybe look at the supply chain. It's not just our business. It's also the partners that we work with. It's all the employees of those partners. It's all the public infrastructure that we are using and that make this possible. And we also have to look at the purpose that we are actually pursuing with this project, with this ambitious endeavor that is our enterprise. So in this case, maybe our main goal wasn't to make transportation easier. Maybe that was just a side goal. Maybe we wanted actually to collect data on movement and sell that data as behavioral profiles to allow people to market products or something like that. So all of this complexity comes in when we look at an enterprise and we look at what kind of outcomes, what kind of results does it actually produce, and then we can judge, is this well designed? And sometimes this gets even featured, this phenomenon that we call enterprise awkwardness in the media. Here you have an edition of Bloomberg Business Week, and they just collected and illustrated all the symptoms that you can see when enterprises are badly designed. Unhappy employees, maybe you have seen some disengaged employees, right? They come to work, but they're not actually coming to work, they're just physically there. You have customer experience issues, operational issues. You have IT. Who here loves really IT with all your heart? You have questionable behavior. Maybe, a bunch of consultants come in, make a lot of slides, and then nothing happens. But the person who, engaged them can't be fired because it's what they said. or budgets, like huge budgets that then are silently just shoved under the carpet after something didn't work out. So a lot of things are being done, and there's also like what the enterprise says it does and what it's actually doing. So we would like to propose a model that you can use to judge whether enterprises are well designed. It's basically a set of questions that are illustrated here with little icons in this Venn diagram. So the first and foremost question, and that's the one that we are really looking at today, is why are we actually here? What's our ambitious endeavor? Why do we think that it's worth investing your time, your money, your attention into this enterprise? And then, once we figured that out, we want to know, how does it actually work? What can we do? What are our capabilities, our processes? What do we need to put in place to make it work? And then, also in the red, but what do people actually get out of it? What's the experience that people will have when interacting with this enterprise, when using its products, when working for it, and so on? And then, at the end, you have, at the intersections of these questions, you have what we need to do. How do we work together? How do we take why we are here into something that works? What comes out of it as products? What do we offer to people? And in the end, what does that mean for our identity? So the green one, how do we appear in people's experiences as a brand? So you can see this as a kind of checklist, Look at all these questions, look at these different perspectives, lenses on the enterprise, and answer, is this actually well designed according to that question? Is it a well-designed enterprise? But today, we want to start with the identity question, which is also our purpose. Why are we here, and what are we pursuing as an enterprise? And now, your complex slide.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for the purpose question again. So again, we are asking, what is the purpose of business? Maybe every individual business has an individual person, as every single human person has an individual dignity. But at the same time, a business is not there alone. It is embedded in a broader society, same as every individual human being is at the same time a social being. That's why talking and thinking about purpose, we might start from the beginning of the greater unity. And this is the common good balance sheet for a company derived from the common good product of a national economy. As said before, such a participatory process hasn't taken place yet. That's why what our movement, which is a young movement, we started only 12 years ago in Austria, Germany, and Italy. What we took is in the green line fundamental values that we found in democratic constitutions. These are considered as the highest cultural goods in democratic societies. I already mentioned them: dignity, solidarity, justice, sustainability, participation, and co-determination. And our question in this scorecard is, how consequently, how authentically an organization like a business is living these values towards all of its stakeholders in the vertical line. And then we again have to practice the big listening and wait for answers or create answers. How can we measure the living of this value towards this stakeholder group? How purposeful is the product? How trustful are relationships to customers? How dignified and decent are the working conditions, like in the SDGs? And so on and so forth. And behind, there's a manual with 100 pages. And probably you will think, okay, it's a sustainability reporting tool. And very probably your company is already reporting on its sustainability performance. But usually, if you talk about the performance, you have a score. And this is exactly what is still missing in the current aspirations of the European Union to create a mandatory sustainability reporting for at least major companies. You might have heard about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. You might have heard that EFRAG in Belgium is commissioned to develop the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. And this is a big next step in not anymore voluntary CSR, but in mandatory sustainability reporting. And the process is not that participatory that we would like it to be. And as a consequence, some vested interests are trying to attack the current legislation process, and they're trying to water it down to a minimum. That's what's happening in these weeks, in these very days and months. And one of the consequences is that it is not even a topic of discussion to create a score of the sustainability report. Why is that so important? To differentiate the result of companies that are doing excellently, that are having an excellent sustainability performance result, to differentiate them from other companies that simply do not care. Why is that so essential? Because today, those companies that do better, that pay better and fairer salaries or wages, that create more social security, they have more costs, they have the higher ecological benchmarks, and they care more. They have higher costs, higher market prices, and a competitive disadvantage in relation to other companies that care less or don't care at all. They have a competitive advantage. And this is a system error. And we would like to fix that system error and to give these companies, those who do best in ethical terms, as for sustainability, social cohesion, democracy, and all our fundamental values, to give them a competitive advantage. And how can we do that? Well, we first need the score. The Common Goal Balance Sheet is offering that score, and then we can link the score to all these incentives between the visible public hand and private business, wherever they touch. We don't need to invent any new one. They already all exist. We can start with public procurement programs, with economic promotion of the city of Copenhagen, of the region, of the country. That's possible. We can go to taxes, we can go to finance conditions. That will be key in the next years, and even we can talk about market access. So there are many possibilities to provide those who do good a competitive advantage, and this will fix the system error of non-sustainable markets of today. What's next?
So, sorry, I started with a really nice car and now we are scaring you because yeah, you might just have to fix everything and it might be mandatory. So last question is, well, if we are successful, how do you do that? How do you actually do that? And that comes back to the question, how do we actually design enterprises? Like, how do we deal with this complexity and have an impact on those complex systems? And they are not cars, right? So we cannot actually plan them, draw them, and then just build them. They are made of and by and for people. And so we think that a good approach is more like this nice guy in the garden. You know, we need to just make everyone flourish together and have the constituent parts of the enterprise show up, right? So all these products and processes, the purposes that we are pursuing, the experiences that our customers are having, that our employees are having, the brands that we put out, the stories that we are telling, all of these things have to fit together to then in the end contribute to one coherent goal on the enterprise level that then hopefully also creates value for the common good. And so I'm not going to go into details. This is my complex slide. If you're interested in this, I will give you a link in a second. But these are all the elements that we found that are the fabric of the enterprise based on the same model, right? So we have the purpose there, we have the organization, we have the processes, the capabilities, we have customer jobs or tasks to be done and their journeys, and all of these things. And the question is, how can we go from analyzing and mapping the fabric of the enterprise to actually changing it? And so what we did here is in a language, and this might also answer a lingering question, which is why did Qualiware, which is a enterprise modeling solution to map and model your enterprise and change it, invite us to this stage? Well, we want to show you how to take, basically this is the same matrix that Christian was showing, just as little graphical icons And for each of the purposes here, you have a score, and depending on that score, it's red, or it's yellow, or it's green. So you are doing more or less well on this. And if we just take one of them, which is, where is it? Reduction of our environmental impact, right? So we take this one purpose and we say, okay, what do we need to do to pursue this purpose and to actually make changes happen in our enterprise that are connected so that this yellow number here goes up and becomes green. So we take this one purpose, reduction of our environmental impact, and we just map out what are all the elements connected to this based on the same model, right? It's the same color scheme that you had before. So we have two organizations, like an ESG team, and maybe we find something like asset accounting. We have capabilities like we need to simulate the carbon footprint, or we need to source green energy depending on what we are doing. We have products. This is basically, by the way, based on a train company, which is a coincidence, but I'm also quite glad about it, given where we are today. So maybe we want to introduce a night train to connect cities by night and with a less environmental impact than an airline. Maybe we create a brand for that we kind of uninspiredly call eco-travel. And this serves a customer task in the customer experience, which is you as a passenger also maybe want to reduce your footprint. So if you want to learn more about this, I invite you to go to enterprise.design. Or also to come to the Qualiware booth. And if you want to join the economy of the common good movement.
If the message of the calling of the common good resonates within you, and you want to take a look beyond the garden of your company, you're more than welcome to join this movement, which started 13 years ago. And now it's in 35 countries. It's not yet in Denmark, but it's in the Netherlands, it's in Sweden, it's in Germany, it's in Austria and Italy and many more countries. And we are not only working with companies, we are also working with cities and schools and universities, although companies are our most emblematic pioneers. And all of them, there are more than 1,000 so far, have done voluntarily this common goal balance sheet. And all of them have changed a bit. They have done tiny and some have done bigger steps. Such, for instance, eliminating completely the flight budget or offering vegan food as the standard and conventional food as the alternative, or creating a tip model in hotels which has been designed by the employees, or turning the property of the company into a purpose foundation, and so on and so forth. There are many ways to contribute to the greater good, and I warmly, once again, invite you to join the movement or create the Danish chapter, for instance, if you feel so. That's it. Thank you much for your attention and for the greater good. Yeah.